Right, welcome back everybody for the debate session. And I've got some things. Well, I want to introduce the panel first of all. We have a very distinguished panel, and I've just done a quick check. We've got some well over 100 years of experience now sitting in front of you, so there we go.
That's me.
Trevor Gore's been around in pharmacy since 1985, about the same time as myself. Steve Howard beats us by a year. He's got 30 years on it. Peter's been 22 years, and I don't know why we haven't met before, but it's good to meet you now.
Hiding.
And the baby of the group is Mike, who's only got 10 years. But he's about to clock up his millionth prescription. So quite a broad group of experience between them. All of them are pharmacists of a kind. 3 of them are real pharmacists. Trevor is an honorary member of the Pharmaceutical Society. Now that's a bit like being the adopted child. We chose him. The rest of us kind of just got there by passing a few exams. But Trevor was chosen. So they're going to debate the motion that says this conference believes that the customer is no longer king in pharmacy. And I'm not experienced at running debates, but everyone tells me it's really important that you get the motion right. So we had a bit of discussion this morning about, sorry, are we talking about king? Because men don't go into pharmacies very often. Is this all about men and pharmacies? So I think for king, read queen. And don't get too bogged down on whether this is a Men's Health Forum conference. It's solidly about the broad role of pharmacy. So to start the debate, over to you, Trevor.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for the applause. Too late. 2 disclaimers before I start. I'm speaking on my behalf, not on behalf of RB. So if you don't like what I say, beat me up, not the company. And it's not all pharmacy. Lots of pharmacy is doing lots of good things, but we can't say X%. So the motion is, the conference believes that the customer is no longer king in pharmacy. So I had to look up a definition of king, so I don't want to fall into Sheila's trap. And it's to say that something is the most important or has the most influence, is the centre of what you do. That doesn't mean they are right. I'm not saying the customer is always right. I'm just saying they are no longer the centre of what you do. Deloitte recently published a report that says over the last decade, the public's perceptions and behaviours have changed immeasurably on the high street. And organisations that don't put them at the centre of what they do will be the ones that fail. I've looked at 2 different types of pharmacy customer. There are more, and I think Steve's going to mention one of the other groups, but there are more than just your RX and OTC customers. But a recent report says the way that pharmacists have spent their time over the last decade, that Deloitte said should be customer-centric, has barely changed over the last decade. So while the high street has been changing immeasurably, pharmacy probably hasn't. And the proportion of time pharmacists spend actually not dispensing but counselling patients has remained stubbornly low. A recent report said it's between 3 and 4% of their time spent counselling patients or customers. And they're not doing it very well if between 1/3 and 1/2 of all medicines prescribed for long-term conditions aren't being used as recommended. The last person that saw the patient is you guys, is pharmacy. And between 1/3 and 1/2 aren't using them properly. If you look at this.
My asthma. They said they'd fix it, but it didn't make any difference at all.
Well, sometimes doctors make mistakes.
The rest of it would have been good. We're going to get the rest of it? I'll go on and we'll come back to that hopefully at the end. I am your customer. You can tell if I step out from the lectern, you probably couldn't see me behind it. I have type 2 diabetes, so I'm taking my metformin. I have raised cholesterol, so I'm taking my simvastatin. I also suffer from asthma, so I take a Ventolin occasionally. And so every month I visit my pharmacy to get my simvastatin and my metformin. And every time the pharmacist comes out to see me, and you know what they say? Can you confirm your address? That's it. That is the total interaction with my pharmacist for over 2.5 years since I was diagnosed with those long-term conditions which need to make sure I'm taking my medicine correctly and there aren't any unwanted effects. If pharmacy was doing its job properly and putting the customer at the centre of everything it did, we wouldn't need a 147-page document of about patient-centred care. and which is all about explaining, listening, responding to customers, not just selling them boxes. Recently, a YouGov poll, the bottom numbers are interesting, the one that scares the hell out of me, is 47% of patients don't realise that pharmacy can help you manage your medicines. If the customer was the centre of what you did, they would know what you did because you'd have told them. I can't imagine anybody using any of the Virgin services doesn't know about the other Virgin services. They're told about them. How many pharmacies of independent explain what they're doing rather than just advertise what they're doing? We heard from Joanna about the Which report. I'm not going to dig into it too much, but when you look at OTC sales, I think many pharmacies haven't delegated their front of counter, they've abdicated it to their assistants. And we've heard the level of advice you get from assistants. I would ask, is the MCA course that they all have to undergo fit for purpose? The questioning technique, 2WAM is a perfectly good questioning technique. It's just not used properly or appropriately. And what happens after the MCA course? The mults have in-house training and do it, but most of the indies don't follow up on any training after that. I think the industry has some cross to bear for this, because quite often we put out stuff that we pretend is training and it's actually brand promotion. I've spent 16 years talking about communication skills that weren't linked to brand, but you hear the same things over and over again. And finally, should we be looking at protocols or individuals? It's individuals, customers, the king and queen that come into pharmacy. It's not protocols. Symptoms don't walk into pharmacy, people do. Finally, is pharmacy next? If you go into a bank and you say, I want a savings account, and they put you on one and it turns out to be the wrong account, we now think we should sue them. If we go on to the power companies and say, I want to be put on this tariff, and it changes and nobody tells me and I'm on the wrong one, we think we have redress. What about going to a pharmacy and I say, I want this product for my headache, and they sell it to me and it's not the right product? When's the next one going to come that pharmacy's picked on? Finally, if the customer really was king, they wouldn't have to ask. The future would be the ultimate goal is people getting the most from their medicines and keeping them healthy. That would be the reality today. The fact that that's an aspiration says that's not where we are. The customer is not king, and that's not me that says that. That's your own society. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor, for a very robust support for the motion. I would remind you that he said these were his personal views and not those of Reckitt Benckiser. I'm sure there'll be similar disclaimers coming from our next. Is it you, Peter?
Yeah, it is.
Peter believes that the motion is wrong.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. I think it's really concerning and slightly depressing to hear that argument that the customer isn't king in pharmacy, because I'm entirely different. The customer is king, will remain king, and has to remain king, because if we don't look after the customers and remain central to pharmacy, then another profession or another organisation will do that. It's always good to start your presentation, which I thought was highly entertaining, with a cartoon. And I do like this cartoon, which summarised, came into the Times in January, following some fantastic PR work that Pharmacy Voice had done about the profession of pharmacy. Now, whilst I maintain that the customer is king, at Boots we definitely don't see, or queen in this instance, we don't see that that will be the end state where we have naked ladies presenting themselves into our pharmacies. The thing which I've heard about in the Which report is that actually, whilst it was a report and it gave us some feedback on the profession, I think the way the profession dealt with the report wasn't to necessarily slander it, but actually to listen and learn from the report. And I think something that is very true is that when a customer complains, or when we don't do something well enough, then that gives us a huge opportunity to learn. So just let's start with a question. If you were starting from scratch today and devising a health system and you wanted to base it around the customer and the customer was king, you'd want a health system that was accessible, it was available where people needed it to be, where they lived, where they worked, where they shopped. You wouldn't want an appointment to call in, and actually it would be a profession that was open all hours. And pharmacy has been doing this for years. Pharmacy is a profession and a health service that is entirely centred around customers. The thing is, it's also a profession that needs to evolve if it's going to stay centred around customers as well. Now, because the customer is king in pharmacy, you have to listen to the customer. Now, because I come from Boots, I'll tell you how we listen to the customers. So if you look at the moment, every week in Boots, we get 30,000 bits of qualitative and quantitative feedback from our customers telling us how we're doing. Indeed, we actually reward our colleagues, our pharmacists and our healthcare teams on the feedback that they get from customers because it's so important to us. We also have 18 million Advantage Card customers. Who's got a Boots Advantage Card? There we go, the whole room puts their hands up. And on the back of your card is a smart chip, which means that when you're in a Boots store and you buy things, we record what you buy, which stores you buy them in, and what products you buy, which things. We have something called TPOL, which is a collection of around about 30,000 Advantage Card users who tell us how we're doing. And if we want to launch a new pharmacy service or sell a new healthcare product, we simply ask them what they think, and we can find out what they mean. And actually, we also do brand tracking. We've been doing it for 25 years in Boots, and we're constantly talking to our customers and asking them what they think Boots are doing, how we could be better. We have to do that because if we don't listen to our customers, we won't be successful as an organisation. And that is becoming so much more important nowadays because customers and patients now have completely free choice and are better informed than ever. Actually, when you listen to your customers, amazing things start to happen. The top KPIs on this are from Boots and the bottom are from the Institute of Customer Service. Just look at the top ones. What we started to do in 2007 was measure how our customers felt about their pharmacy service. And these are just two of the KPIs. You might think 45% is disappointing, and it was. But the other thing was we only measure the top box score out of a 5-point rating. And the reason we do that is because that's the thing that changes behaviour. If it's 5 out of 5, customers will change behaviour and come to you. 4 out of 5, they might be pleased, but they're not going to change the behaviour. And by focusing and listening on our customer, and indeed keeping the customer king, we've seen our KPIs on things like customer satisfaction move from 45 to 71, or actually we've seen time taken to get a prescription, one of the most important things to a customer, actually move to nearly 80%. But that's not just Boots. The bottom chart shows the Institute of Customer Care scores for retail non-food, and that includes community pharmacy. We're a big player in this score. And what you can see is over the last 7 years, those scores have steadily increased year on year on year. And the thing that's really weird is the next person to speak is actually going to say, Steve's going to go, I don't stand for customer care. His organisation's in that bottom chart, and I can tell you, customer care's been shifting in his organisation as fast as mine for the last 7 years. Something we should ask him about. What you can see at the end is the scores started to fall away. Yeah? Well, actually, is that because we're getting worse at customer care? No, it's not. It's because the customer's expectations are raising, and we as a profession have to start and rise and get even better at putting the customer as king. So we have to evolve because we have got customers whose attitudes towards healthcare is changing. They're getting older, they're suffering from more long-term conditions, and actually people's interest in their health is starting to change. Our customer also isn't just the patient or the customer who walks into a pharmacy. I think we have another very important customer who is the NHS. Because we are a service provider to the NHS, and actually we also need to listen to that customer, and that customer is telling us that we need to do things more efficiently and also provide better health outcomes. And so it's really important as we step forward, we keep that customer at front of mind too. And I think there is a moment in time for pharmacy where we really could embrace our ambition. And we're also starting to see a more devolved and local health system, which again is giving customers and patients more choice and making them king. And technology will enable even better customer care in the future, whether that is health records to ensure that pharmacists can understand their patients' needs better and perhaps not have to ask them their address every time, and also technology which will start to remove pharmacists from the day-to-day dispensing tasks in the future and give them more time and space with customers. And the thing is, I can see pharmacy starting to do this already, whether it's a pan-London flu immunisation service, whether it's anticoagulation testing in new AQP providers, or actually whether it's the work that Community Pharmacy Futures have done in the northwest of the UK, I can see pharmacy starting to step forward, put the customer at the heart of what they do, and really make a difference. Just a closing thought from me and a model for our profession. I think we need to provide pharmacy with brilliant leadership, which is totally focused on patients and customers. If we do that, we'll have empowered and engaged colleagues and empowered, engaged pharmacists, dispensers, technicians. As a result of that, they'll provide brilliant customer care. That'll engage our customers even more in what pharmacy can do, and satisfaction will continue to rise. So absolutely, the customer is king. It will be in the future, and it has to be if pharmacy as a profession is going to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Well, not daunted by this onslaught, Steve is about to get up there and really hammer home this motion. No doubt with the caveat that this doesn't apply to anything that he might be doing at Lloyds.
You got that bit right, yes. So everything I'm going to say isn't my personal view, and it's certainly not the view of the organisation that I represent, but just regard everything I say as the views of an independent, critical friend, to use Joanna's language. So let's have a bit of a reality check, I think, here. So Peter said something I thought very interesting at the beginning of his session, where he said the customer is king and will remain king, because if we don't look after them, somebody else will. Well, just by the virtue of the fact that somebody else might look after them doesn't make them king, in my view. So I am the second up here with this fantastic development opportunity presented to me by Mr. Thomas down there to present the reasons why I don't think the customer is king in pharmacy. So I think everything that I say will become self-evident, so I'm going to be fairly brief. So I want you to imagine a world where the customer is king in pharmacy. What would they see? What would they hear, and what would they experience? And I'll ask you a question as well. Why is it that patients complain that they only get to spend 6 minutes in their GP surgery, and yet the same patients complain that they have to spend more than 6 minutes in a pharmacy? Possibly they don't understand what pharmacy is doing, and possibly we don't understand what we need to be providing them with. And I can see some nods. So, and hopefully this will change at some point. Okay. So, in this world then where the customer is king, what would they see? What would they feel? What would they experience universally and consistently from pharmacy? Well, undoubtedly, and Peter's slides hinted at some of this with the Institute of Customer Service Research, they would experience exemplary customer service in all cases, because we'd be treating them as if they were special. They are, after all, royalty, so we would be treating them as such. They would also have services designed around their needs. So imagine a world where they're discharged from hospital. They would experience seamless transfer of care from hospital to community pharmacy. They may even have a targeted MUR. They may even have a follow-up after that. They would have a completely consistent experience, irrespective of which pharmacy they went in and who owned that pharmacy. They would experience really high quality advice around their needs and their wants. They would be met by people who had a genuine and authentic customer focus. They would be dealt with by pharmacy teams who put their needs at the heart of everything that they did and worked efficiently and effectively. And there are a number of different customers as well, the NHS being one, GPs being another, and we would tailor everything we did around their needs. However, what do we see? And I don't want to go too much into which, but we have a completely unsatisfactory picture going back to 2008, with no real improvement. We have healthcare assistants, where 66% were found to be giving poor and even dangerous advice. We have training requirements for healthcare assistants which are 18 years old and haven't really changed very much. And has the world changed in that time? Well, yes, of course it has, but the training requirements have not kept pace with them. We have protocols rather than professional judgment. So we have WAM, which we all know and love, and if Alison was here, she would tell you that WAM was never meant for the purpose that it is now being used for. It was never meant to be a Gestapo-style series of questions that we would ask irrespective of the answers that we gave or the information that we elicited. We would expect better counselling on medicines, and Trevor has alluded to a high percentage of people dissatisfied with the information they receive when they get their medicines, so in consequence they don't take them properly. That is costing the NHS £500 million a year. That's unacceptable. And the people who can have a real impact on this is the people who say they are the experts on medicines, and that's the pharmacy profession. We also see, and customers experience, a variable standard of care. And we saw that in the which figures that were put up by Joanna. There is a variable experience because of practices, because of environments. And irrespective of which pharmacy you go in, you're not always guaranteed to get the same experience. So I would say that Trevor and R's piece is self-evident, that the customer can no longer be king, because we would be doing things differently. But what I would say is they damn well should be king. So whenever, wherever people access pharmacy services, their experience should be universally good and high quality. So I think we need to raise our game as a profession, and that is my plea. So my session, I think, has come to an end. So for the moment, I will rest my case. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Mike, you get the final word and a passionate plea for against the motion.
Okay.
Clearly he's firing up with a good glass of gin and tonic water.
Contrary to Sheila's introduction, there is actually only one proper pharmacist here on the panel today, and that is me. I spend 6 days a week doing nothing but talking to patients, knowing my customers, getting to understand what they want. Unfortunately, I don't have 30,000 pieces of qualitative information, but I do have 3,000 people that I know as people, not just as bits of green paper, as protocols, as procedures. In my pharmacy, which has been looking after my community for 224 years this year, and I hope it's going to be looking after the community for another 224 years, the patient is absolutely central to everything that we do. The customer these days is changing. They're better informed than they ever were. The internet really has changed the game in a lot of respects. So now they're coming in armed with bits of paper which are not just Daily Mail rubbish anymore. They're sometimes peer-reviewed. Sometimes they're very well-written sources of information. Sometimes I even direct the patient to the same source of information. So they're better informed than ever. They also have higher expectations than ever. So in a lot of respects, we look up to the likes of John Lewis, Waitrose, even Peter's organisation, which is my fiercest opponent on the competition front. I have to keep moving forward because my customers expect more and more from me every year. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. I think that's really the message that I'm trying to convey. Not only are they having higher expectations, they're also much more vocal about their opinions. So now we have the tyranny of the review button, which this is taken directly from NHS Choices. Patients can leave a review of my pharmacy and tell me what I think. I think that gives them the ultimate control. They can tell the rest of the world what they think about me. In the olden days, what some people might refer to as the good old days, people could have a bad experience in a business. They might tell their friend if you're unlucky, but it may not go any further. Now it can travel halfway around the world before they're even out of the shop. So consumers are both better informed, they are more demanding, they're more vocal. In pharmacy, we've got an amazing choice. There are 13,500 pharmacies up and down the land. They're everywhere, from villages, high street, shopping parades, health centres, supermarkets. There's even one in a hairdresser near us. The public have no other healthcare provider which can match the same level of choice. You can choose not only who provides your pharmacy services, but when and where. I think they're completely spoiled for choice. But they also have the most amazing gift, which is a free choice. They're not tied to me in any way, shape or form. Their experience is only as good as the last time that they visited my pharmacy. So it doesn't matter that I've looked after them well for the previous 6 years. If they have a bad experience, they will and do go elsewhere. I have no other option other than to keep my patients happy. And do you know what? They choose pharmacy. Overwhelmingly, patients like pharmacy. I think this is one of the key messages I want to get across today. We can be full of doom and gloom about the world. We can fret over why our customer satisfaction levels are at 80% and not 100%. Well, you're never going to keep all of the people happy all of the time. But overwhelmingly, people like to come to pharmacy. So where they're given a free choice, and one of the services that we offer in my pharmacy are private patient group directions. So for the first time, I can treat conditions including erectile dysfunction, alopecia. I can offer travel and flu vaccinations. Where people have a free choice, they choose pharmacy. So in London right now, 70,000 people have chosen during the first year of the pharmacy flu vaccination campaign, 70,000 people have chosen pharmacy. I vaccinated lots of people who would have qualified for a free NHS flu jab, but they chose to come to me and pay for it. Can't get better than free, so why would you pay for something that you can get for free? The answer is that they had the choice. Why wasn't it convenient for them to wait in line at the GP surgery for 4 hours? I don't know. But they have control. They can go wherever they like. For me, I think that's a really strong message. I got lots of people coming back for their second flu vaccines. It's the second year we've offered the service. And they really, really appreciate the fact that they can take their business and take it somewhere else. We all know the pressures that the NHS is under. We know that GPs are stretched. So why not give more people the choice? In pharmacy, we've got a long heritage of providing patient-centred services. We provide free collection delivery services. We provide free blood pressure testing. We provide free MDS. These are not for my benefit. They're for the patient's benefits. They're to tie them into me. So I feel really proud of our heritage in pharmacy of keeping people at the centre of what we do. Here's an example. The data's a little bit old, but I'm waiting for the London flu vaccination service to report. This is a sample of a service on the Isle of Wight where more than 2,000 people were given a flu vaccination in a pharmacy. They had a choice of going to a pharmacy or going to a GP practice. Of the 2,000 people that chose to go to a pharmacy, 98% of them said that they would choose a pharmacy again. 90% of them said that the service they received was excellent. A further 8% said it was okay, but very few dissatisfied customers. And guess what? If you're dissatisfied, you have free choice to go somewhere else. That is the thing that drives me forward in my business, because if I don't keep my customer happy, if I don't keep them central to what I do, I go out of business. That's the stark choice. So, in summary, just to... there we go. There's lots and lots to think about. Consumers are better informed, they're more powerful than ever. They have that free choice. I think that's really central to why they are so powerful in pharmacy in the way that they aren't in general practice, that they aren't in their choice of hospitals. We're really well placed to empower them. Now with the tools that are available, private patient group directions, more and more commissioned services, we offer a very good smoking cessation service. The service level that we try and meet is to see the customer when they ask to give up smoking, because you may never get another opportunity. If I say, come back a week on Wednesday because that's when it's convenient for me, I'll never see them again. And that's one of the most powerful, cost-effective healthcare interventions that we can make. So I have to meet my customers' expectations, not only sometimes, but all of the time. No provider can afford to be complacent. Unless you're moving forward, you're moving backwards. I feel really strongly that we've got lots to feel positive about in community pharmacy. Yeah, I've heard a lot of discussion about which anything that allows us to examine what we do is a good thing, and as much as I tease Joanna about her research methods, at MPA we've developed a new tool which allows counter assistants to validate their own learning. So we have a tool called Assess and Learn, which our members can log on. They can assess their own level of understanding and knowledge. They can then access training and support to help them to develop. I think pharmacy is unparalleled in both the choice and options it gives patients. I think it's a really well-loved resource in the UK. The patient is absolutely, always was, always will be, king in pharmacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike. I should have said that it's obviously obvious now. The panel was chosen not only for their incredible experience, their good looks, their unfailing knowledge of their subject, but also their absolute ability to keep to time. So thank you for that. I worried that we might end up spending the whole time in the discussion, because this is actually the opportunity for you to start having a discussion about this, because we're going to have a vote on this at about 12:30. So at 12:30, the intention is the panel will reconvene, and Trevor and Peter will have one more go at persuading you either side of this motion. And in between now and then, I suggest you have a little chat at your tables and think about things you'd like to ask, because when we come back at 12:30, you have a chance to ask some questions to clarify what issues that people have covered that are not clear. But I've been summing them up. So the people for the motion who say that the customer is no longer king in pharmacy, that was Trevor and Steve. Now, Trevor said, had pretty damning things to say. He said pharmacy hasn't changed. They've got little time, spent little time on counselling. They haven't changed in years. If they really had the customer as king, you wouldn't need to set out a huge document explaining about what patient-centred care meant. They've abdicated the front of counter. The training offer from industry is really just branded promotion disguised as training, and unless pharmacy learns from other sectors, they are not going to improve at all. He was amply supported by Steve, who described himself as a critical friend and said they're not king. If they were king, if they were royalty, then we'd be treating them like that. We'd be giving the customer exemplary service, and services centred around their needs. We'd have seamless care between the secondary and primary sectors. There'd be consistency, and the picture is far from satisfactory, with training requirements that are really old. I love the idea, and Alison would have loved the idea, that WHAM is being used as a Gestapo-style set of questions. He concedes that the customer should be king, but is working very hard to persuade you that as of this moment, they are definitely not king. Now, in favour, against the motion and passionate about how the customer-centred part of it is, we had Peter, who started off by saying, if they are king, if we don't look after them, somebody else will. And he had a lot to say about how Boots listen and learn, and how the profession as a whole has listened and learned to organisations like Which, who hold up a mirror to the service. And if you listen, then you will get feedback, which you can then use to build the services that your customers want. He mentioned how at Boots they build feedback into reward schemes for staff. And he points out over the last 7 years, satisfaction scores are generally going up, but they need to keep going up, and there needs to be more time spent providing the exemplary service to customers. So Mike, holding up the end of it all and describing himself as the only real pharmacist. I think we'll all have something to say about that afterwards, won't we, guys?
That's another motion.
I'm not even allowed to say I'm a pharmacist any longer. I'm not on the register. He knows 3,000 people really well, and I thought, my God, that is his customers, of course. I'd forgotten that they existed. And he said they are changing, they're better informed, and pharmacy needs to keep moving forward. I've forgotten about the NHS Choices review button. So doctors quite often refer to that now. If you want to know what my patients think of me, just look at it. It's all on the website. Be interesting to see pharmacy starting to encourage customers to make use of that tool. people like pharmacy, and he had some really good examples of things that pharmacy is doing that they didn't used to do in the past, like the flu vaccination services, patient group directions, and he was very optimistic about the development of patient services and opportunities to empower the patient afterwards. So he's absolutely convinced that they are king. So those are the arguments for and against.